At my grandfather's funeral, everyone got what they wanted. Everyone except me. My cousins were laughing quietly behind their hands, exchanging sly glances as the lawyer read the will. The penthouse. The yacht. Control of the company. $94 million split neatly between them like some cruel corporate joke. And then, my name was called. I stepped forward, heart pounding, expecting perhaps a token check, a modest inheritance, a sentimental trinket. Instead, the lawyer handed me a worn, leather passport. That was it. No money, no company, no penthouse, just a passport. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. I stared at it, confusion and disbelief battling in my chest. The leather was soft, old, and cracked at the edges. Its pages were filled with stamps, some faded beyond recognition. I flipped through it slowly, hoping some hidden note would explain why Grandpa had chosen this bizarre gift for me. But there was nothing. No letter. No explanation. Just the passport, stamped all over, and the silent judgment of my cousins. Victor, my oldest cousin, leaned over and whispered with a smirk, "Frame it. You'll get memories." He was 35, sharp suit, sharper grin. Always thinking he was better than everyone else. Lila, my other cousin, 32, perfect hair, perfect smile, the kind of woman who could charm the birds out of the sky, just laughed softly, shaking her head. Classic Grandpa. Always a mystery. Poor Emily. Her words weren't cruel, exactly, but they landed like tiny hammers on my already bruised ego. I clenched the passport in my hands as the service ended, my thoughts spinning. Did Grandpa think I was too irresponsible for money? Did he dislike me more than I thought? Or was this some kind of test? I could feel the weight of family history pressing down on me, the whispered rumors about Grandpa's eccentric ways, his secret travels, the stories he never shared. He was 88. A self-made billionaire, a man who had built his empire from the ground up, yet always seemed to be hiding something. And now I was holding the first tangible clue to whatever that secret might be. I left the funeral quietly, the laughter and chatter of the other guests fading behind me. On the flight to Rome, I opened the passport again. The pages were dense with markings, stamps from cities I didn't even know existed, dates that didn't make sense, and handwriting so tiny I had to squint to decipher it. Each page felt heavier than the last, as if Grandpa had packed a lifetime of secrets into this little book. Why Rome? Why me? Why not Victor or Lila? Questions tumbled over each other in my mind, and I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that this was just the beginning of something far larger than I could imagine. By the time the plane touched down, I had gone through every stamp, every page at least twice. Nothing looked normal. Nothing looked coincidental. And yet, I still didn't understand what Grandpa wanted me to do. I expected someone to meet me at the airport with explanations, maybe a letter, a lawyer with instructions. Instead, a man in a black suit was waiting for me. He didn't smile. He didn't introduce himself. He just looked at the passport, then at me, and I knew instinctively that he had been expecting me. His eyes were sharp, calculating, almost intimidating. I had the sense that he wasn't just waiting for me, he was waiting for the passport. The city of Rome spread out behind him, golden in the late afternoon sun, but I barely noticed. My pulse raced as he stepped closer and finally spoke. His voice was calm, measured, but it carried a weight that made my stomach twist. 6 words. Just 6 words. That was all it took to make my jaw drop. 6 words that would change everything I thought I knew about my grandfather, my family, and even myself. What could Grandpa have left me that was so important he would risk everyone else thinking it worthless? Was this passport really a key to some hidden fortune? Or a test of character, a way to see who I truly was? Every scenario I could imagine seemed both impossible and terrifying. And yet, standing there with the stranger staring at me, I knew I was about to step into a story I could never have predicted, a story that would pull me into the darkest, most secret corners of my grandfather's empire. I clutched the passport tighter and asked myself, had I really inherited anything at all? Or had Grandpa just handed me a puzzle I wasn't ready to solve? And what about my cousins? They had everything. Or so it seemed. But I had a feeling that by the end of this journey, nothing would be as it appeared. As the sun dipped lower over the city, I felt a mix of fear and excitement, the kind that only comes when you know life is about to change in ways you can't yet comprehend. And yet, even with all my questions, all my doubts, I had no idea what was waiting for me in the shadows, ready to reveal the truth that Grandpa had kept hidden for decades. But what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. I spent the entire flight staring at that passport. Each page was a world of its own, faded ink, stamps from cities I'd never heard of, even countries that barely existed on any map I had. I turned the pages slowly, tracing the lines with my finger as if touching them could reveal Grandpa's secret. Why had he left this to me? Why not Victor or Lila? They had everything else. Was this some cruel joke? Or a test? The first stamp I recognized was from Venice, dated nearly 30 years ago. But the handwriting near it wasn't his usual scrawl. Tiny, precise, almost like someone had taken extreme care to make it unreadable at first glance. Each page seemed to carry a code, letters, numbers, symbols barely visible. I felt a thrill run through me. Grandpa had always loved riddles, puzzles, and games, but this was something else entirely. This felt like a breadcrumb trail. And I, apparently, was the only one meant to follow it. I asked myself again, what could a passport possibly hold that was worth more than a penthouse or a yacht? The thought made me laugh nervously. Was Grandpa trying to teach me patience? Or was this a hidden fortune, a secret inheritance that only I could unlock? I'd always been the quiet one in the family, the one overlooked in conversations and boardroom arguments, and now I was holding the key to something no one else could touch. But what was the key? I didn't know yet, and that uncertainty was intoxicating. By the time the plane landed in Rome, I had memorized every stamp, every annotation, every date I could decipher. My hands were sore from flipping the pages over and over, my mind racing with possibilities. I carried the passport with me like a talisman as I stepped off the plane, scanning the airport for anyone unusual. That's when I saw him. He was standing near the exit, immaculately dressed in a black suit that seemed almost too formal for the late afternoon. His hair was dark, streaked with gray at the temples, and his eyes were sharp, calculating, almost unnervingly calm. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just stood there, staring. I felt a shiver run down my spine. There was something about him that made me certain he was not just waiting for me, he was waiting for the passport. As I approached him, he finally spoke, his voice low and deliberate. "Emily Carter," he said. The way he said my name made it feel heavy, important, like it had been echoing through time, waiting to be spoken. "You finally found it." I blinked. "Found what?" I asked, though my voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. He lifted one eyebrow, then glanced at the passport in my hands. "This," he said simply, tapping the worn leather. "This is more than a passport. It's a map, a key, a guide. And it belongs to you and only you." I laughed nervously. "You're joking, right? This thing? It's old, expired. It's just a passport." He shook his head slowly. "It is exactly what your grandfather intended you to have. Everything else? The penthouse, the yacht, the money? That was for show. The real inheritance, this passport points to that. But it is not a gift. It is a responsibility." I felt my pulse quicken. Responsibility? What could that possibly mean? And why leave it to me, the one they all dismissed as the least ambitious? Something about the way he said it made me realize that Grandpa had always known I was the only one capable of following the trail he had laid out. He motioned for me to follow him out of the airport, and I did, feeling a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Rome sprawled around us, ancient and golden in the fading sunlight, but I barely noticed it. All I could think about were the possibilities the passport held. Was it a secret bank account? A hidden vault? A company no one knew existed? Or something even more extraordinary? As we walked through the narrow cobblestone streets, Luca Romano, his name, he finally told me, was Luca Romano, began to explain. "Your grandfather was a clever man," he said, his tone almost conversational, yet filled with an undercurrent of gravity. He knew the world wasn't fair, that greed would cloud judgment. That is why he left the obvious wealth to your cousins. But the real power, the real inheritance, he planned for it to be yours, hidden behind layers of secrecy, puzzles, and tests. I wanted to ask questions, hundreds of them, but I knew this was just the beginning. The clues were already starting to reveal themselves, but I didn't yet understand the depth of what Grandpa had orchestrated. Every step I took in Rome felt like I was stepping further into a story I couldn't turn back from. And as we turned a corner into a quiet alley, he stopped and looked directly at me. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The first step is here, in this passport. Follow it carefully. Miss nothing. Trust no one. My heart raced. Miss nothing. Trust no one. Those words echoed in my mind, mingling with the images of Victor and Lila back home, laughing at my inheritance. It was clear now Grandpa had set a trap, or perhaps a test, for everyone. But what he left me, that was something far beyond money. Something dangerous. Something powerful. I clutched the passport tighter, my mind spinning with questions. What had he hidden? How deep did this go? And most importantly, who else was already watching me, waiting for me to fail? But what came next would take everything I thought I knew about my grandfather, my family, and even myself, and turn it completely upside down. Rome had a way of making every secret feel larger than life. The streets were narrow, winding, and impossibly ancient, each corner hiding whispers of history, and, as I was beginning to realize, hidden truths of my grandfather's making. I clutched the passport like a lifeline as Luca guided me through alleyways and past dimly lit cafes. Every stamp is more than a memory, he said. It's a code, a key, a location. Some are obvious, some are not. Miss one, and you risk losing everything. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but my voice caught in my throat. I wasn't entirely sure I believed him yet. Could a passport really be more than a travel document? Could it really hide an inheritance more valuable than the penthouse, the yacht, the company my cousins had been handed like a birthright? But then I looked again at the pages, each stamp, each tiny notation, each scribbled number and letter. There was no randomness here. Grandpa had meticulously crafted this. And apparently, I was the only one smart or careful enough to follow it. We stopped in front of a small, unassuming building tucked away on a side street. Luca produced a key from inside his coat pocket and gestured toward a heavy door. This is where the first instruction is hidden, he said. The passport will lead you. My heart pounded as I stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of aged paper and dust. Rows of shelves were stacked with books, old maps, and files. At first glance, it seemed like a library. But Luca motioned for me to open the passport. I flipped it to a page with a small, almost invisible symbol, a spiral I hadn't noticed before. Luca nodded toward a shelf. Look there, he said. I hesitated, then reached for a book with a matching spiral etched into the spine. When I pulled it out, a compartment in the shelf clicked open. Inside was an envelope, thick and yellowed with age. I opened it carefully. Inside, there was a small set of instructions, handwritten in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting. Follow the journey he mapped, Luca said. Do not trust anyone with this information. Your cousins? They have money, but they lack the patience. And patience is the key. I sat down on the dusty floor, envelope in hand, trying to comprehend what I was holding. The instructions were cryptic, referencing locations, dates, and people I had never met. There were clues embedded in the passport. Tiny notations beside stamps, arrows pointing to letters, a cipher of some kind that I hadn't yet deciphered. Every time I thought I understood one piece, another layer revealed itself. Then it hit me. Grandpa had always been secretive, but this went beyond eccentricity. This was genius-level foresight. He had predicted my cousin's greed, my own tendency to doubt myself, the possibility that someone might try to interfere. And he had accounted for all of it. Every stamp, every scribble, every faint pencil mark in the passport was part of a plan only I could execute. I thought about Victor and Lila back home. Victor, with his sharp suits and sharper grin, always thinking money was the measure of everything. Lila, charming and manipulative, always finding a way to get people to do her bidding. They had everything they wanted, yet I had something far more valuable. But it wasn't just about inheritance. It was about character, about proving I was capable of seeing through the layers of deception Grandpa had laid out. The more I studied the passport, the more I realized that Grandpa's empire wasn't just financial. He had built something far more intricate: networks of influence, coded agreements, secret accounts, hidden investments in companies no one knew existed. And somehow, he had woven them into this simple, worn passport. Every city, every date, every notation led to another layer of this hidden legacy. But following it wouldn't be simple. Luca warned me repeatedly. Someone was already watching. Someone wanted the secrets for themselves. My cousins might have laughed at me at the funeral, but now I understood. Their greed could become dangerous. They would stop at nothing to intercept the trail I was following. And that realization made my pulse quicken. I leaned back against the wall, the envelope and passport resting on my knees, and tried to map it all in my mind. There was Venice, Florence, Milan, dates that seemed random but weren't. Codes embedded in stamps that, once deciphered, pointed to locations or accounts or safes. Grandpa had left me a map of his empire hidden in plain sight. And suddenly, the idea of inheriting money seemed almost trivial compared to the thrill and the danger of uncovering it. Then Luca said something that made me stop breathing. There is one entry in the ledger that concerns only you. It was meant for your eyes alone. But it carries a warning. Trust no one, not even your family. They will think you are chasing nonsense, and some of them will try to stop you. Some of them will lie to you. Some may even kill for what they think is theirs. The weight of his words hit me like a hammer. My heart raced, my stomach churned. I realized this wasn't just a scavenger hunt. This was a high-stakes test of loyalty, intelligence, and courage. My cousins had all the outward wealth, but I had the map, the key, and Grandpa's trust. But was that enough to survive the journey? I tucked the passport and envelope into my bag, my fingers trembling slightly. Every step from this point on felt like stepping deeper into a labyrinth I had no idea how to escape. And as I looked up, Luca's shadow stretched long in the fading light of Rome. His eyes were unreadable, but I sensed he was watching me carefully, waiting for me to make my first move. And then it hit me. The ledger, the passport, the envelope, none of it was just about money. It was about power, influence, and knowledge. Grandpa had hidden something monumental from the world, and somehow, I was the only one who could claim it. But someone else was already moving, and they didn't care about rules or morality. I swallowed hard, clutching the passport tightly. This was no longer just about following Grandpa's trail. It was about surviving it. And that's when I realized my cousins weren't the only ones in play. Someone else, someone dangerous, had already taken notice of me. What came next would reveal the full scale of my grandfather's secret, and I was about to see just how far the web he had spun reached. The narrow streets of Rome blurred past me as I followed Luca through another maze of alleys and hidden passageways. Each step I took felt heavier than the last, as if the city itself was pressing down with the weight of secrets centuries old. My grandfather's passport burned in my pocket, a small, worn talisman that now felt like a map to something far more dangerous than money. I had deciphered part of the ledger, traced some of the locations, but the deeper I went, the more I realized. Grandpa had hidden his true fortune in plain sight, in a way that no lawyer, accountant, or greedy relative could touch. Luca stopped in front of a building so unassuming it could have been ignored by a tourist walking past. No signs, no numbers, no hint of what lay inside. He turned to me, his dark eyes serious. "The final step is here," he said. "It's not just about the wealth. It's about proving you understand the empire your grandfather built. Are you ready?" I nodded, though a tremor ran through my hands. Inside, the building was cold and silent. Ancient stone walls enclosed a space that felt more like a vault than a building, lined with metal doors, hidden compartments, and a labyrinth of stairways that spiraled downward into darkness. The air smelled faintly of iron and old paper. I realized then that this was no ordinary inheritance. It was a puzzle, a fortress, a challenge. Grandpa hadn't just left money. He had left his legacy as a test. We moved deeper into the labyrinth, following the passport's instructions. Each stamp, each note, each cryptic symbol I had carefully documented led to another hidden compartment, another ledger, another key. I felt my pulse quicken with every discovery. There were safe deposit boxes hidden beneath layers of false walls, secret documents tucked into ancient books, and encrypted codes in plain sight. I had uncovered evidence of offshore holdings, undisclosed art collections, intellectual property, and even a private company no one had ever heard of. It was more than I could have imagined, and all of it pointed to me. Then Luca stopped suddenly, his hand on a door. "Behind this door lies the ultimate proof of your grandfather's trust," he said. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. "But once you step through, there is no turning back. You will know everything, but you will also know the danger that comes with it." My heart hammered as I opened the door. Inside, a room glowed with soft light. In the center, a desk held stacks of ledgers, passports, contracts, and a sleek tablet with encrypted files waiting to be unlocked. I approached slowly, taking in the magnitude of what I was seeing. Grandpa had left me a complete roadmap to his empire, hidden wealth, secret ventures, and influence spanning continents. And then I heard it, a low hum of movement outside. I froze. My cousins, Victor and Lila. They were here. They must have tracked me, must have realized that the worthless passport was actually the key to the real inheritance. My stomach twisted. They had always underestimated me. But now, they were about to see that I was the only one who could follow the trail. Victor stepped through the doorway first, his sharp grin replaced with a flash of shock. "Emily, what is all this?" His voice was nervous, betraying more than he wanted. Lila followed, her eyes wide, scanning the room with a mix of greed and disbelief. You got the passport? You've been following it." Her tone was sharp, accusatory. I held my ground, clutching the passport. "Grandpa left this for me. Everything else? That was for show. This is the real inheritance, and it's mine to claim because he trusted me to follow it." Victor laughed, a sound that didn't reach his eyes. "You mean to tell me all this because of a passport?" He shook his head. "We could have had it all. The penthouse, the yacht, the company. And you're chasing a book." But I wasn't just chasing a book. I had uncovered ledgers proving hidden accounts, contracts granting me legal rights, and digital files with intellectual property worth millions. I realized then the truth. Grandpa hadn't just given me a passport. He had handed me power, knowledge, and security that no one else could touch. My cousins had wealth in the open, but I had the tools to control the empire's very foundations. Luca stepped beside me, his expression calm but firm. "The empire is yours, Emily. But power comes with responsibility. And danger. Your cousins, others, they'll see this as an opportunity. You must be careful. Use the passport wisely. Follow every instruction. Miss nothing." I swallowed hard, feeling the enormity of it. This wasn't just about money. This was about strategy, influence, and legacy. Grandpa had designed it this way for a reason. And now it was up to me to step into his world and claim what was mine. Victor and Lila were not going to leave quietly. Their eyes glinted with greed and determination, and I realized the battle was only beginning. Grandpa had trusted me, but he had also warned me, trust no one. Not even family. I held up the passport, my fingers gripping the worn leather tightly. I could feel its weight, not just in my hand, but in my chest, in my mind. Every stamp, every symbol, every tiny scribble had led me here. And now I understood that the real inheritance was not a number in a bank account, not a yacht or a penthouse. It was the knowledge, the power, and the legacy my grandfather had built in secret. But before I could take my next step, a shadow moved at the far edge of the room. I froze, heart in my throat. Someone else had entered the vault. Someone who had been watching, waiting, and now knew the secret too. And in that instant, I realized this was far from over. The passport had revealed the empire, but it had also revealed danger I could not yet see. I stood in the vault, the passport clutched tightly in my hands, as Victor and Lila's angry voices echoed behind me. Their shock had turned to fury, their earlier laughter and mockery replaced by disbelief that I had actually uncovered the real inheritance. They couldn't understand it, not the codes, the hidden accounts, the contracts, or the secret ventures my grandfather had left me. But I could. Every stamp, every scribble, every cryptic note had been a breadcrumb leading me to this moment, and I realized something that made my chest tighten. Grandpa had trusted me, and I had not failed him. Luca stepped forward, his gaze steady. "This is what he wanted," he said. He wanted to see who could follow the path, who could understand it, and who would rise to the challenge. "You did, Emily. You are the rightful heir to everything your grandfather built, not just the money, but the knowledge, the influence, and the power." I swallowed hard, letting the magnitude of his words sink in. This wasn't just inheritance. This was responsibility, strategy, and legacy. I had been given tools that no one else in the family had access to. Tools that could change the direction of the company, secure hidden fortunes, and even influence decisions in ways that would ripple across continents. I realized then that Grandpa had planned for this moment for decades. Every clever riddle, every secret, every cryptic stamp in the passport had been a test, and I had passed. Victor stepped closer, rage flashing in his eyes. "You can't be serious. This passport? How could this be worth anything?" I looked at him, calm but resolute. "It's not the passport. It's what it represents. Everything else, the penthouse, the yacht, the money you think is power, that was visible. What I hold is invisible. It's knowledge, it's leverage, it's the real empire. And Grandpa trusted me to wield it wisely." Lila's lips pressed into a thin line. "You think you're better than us? Just because you followed some game?" I shook my head. "It's not a game. It's foresight." Grandpa knew the truth about all of us. He knew who was greedy, who was impatient, who was manipulative. And he left me the only inheritance that truly matters. Not money, not luxury, control, insight, and the chance to protect what he built. A tense silence fell over the room. Outside, the golden light of Rome was fading, but inside the vault, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I had been underestimated my entire life, dismissed as the quiet, overlooked one. But here I stood, holding the key to an empire my cousins couldn't touch, with a clear map of power in my hands. And suddenly, I understood something profound. Grandpa's 6 words, the ones Luca had whispered the first day, weren't just a revelation. They were a promise. "Your grandfather planned this for you." And he had. I glanced down at the passport, the worn leather now feeling like a crown in my hands. Each page, each stamp, each hidden note had led me here. And I realized then that my inheritance wasn't just about what I could claim, it was about how I chose to use it. The decision was mine, and mine alone. I could protect the empire, expand it, or even redefine it entirely. Grandpa had given me power, yes, but with it, he had given me choice. Victor and Lila were still fuming behind me, but I could see it in their eyes. They understood, finally, that the visible wealth they had been handed was insignificant compared to what lay hidden. They had been blinded by greed, and I had been given clarity. I smiled faintly, not out of triumph, but out of understanding. Grandpa had always been a step ahead of us all. Luca placed a hand on my shoulder. "Remember, Emily. Trust no one, miss nothing, and follow the path he set. The world will try to interfere. But you have what he believed only you could manage." I nodded, feeling the weight of the passport, the ledgers, and the secret knowledge settle in my mind. I was no longer the overlooked cousin. I was the inheritor of an empire far beyond what anyone had imagined. And I realized then that this inheritance was more than wealth, it was wisdom, foresight, and power beyond measure. As we stepped out of the vault, the sun had nearly set over Rome. I looked back once at the rows of ledgers and the walls of secrets. Grandpa had trusted me with more than money. He had trusted me with his life's work, his vision, and his legacy. And for the first time in my life, I felt fully prepared to honor it. Victor and Lila followed reluctantly, their faces a mix of anger and awe. I knew the family dynamic had shifted irrevocably. I had the knowledge, the power, and the map to control the empire, but I also knew this wasn't the end. There would be challenges, betrayals, and tests ahead. But I had the passport. I had the knowledge. I had Grandpa's trust. And somehow I knew I could face whatever came next. I glanced at the worn leather in my hands one last time. Some inheritances aren't about money, I realized. They're about insight, courage, and the willingness to see what no one else can. Grandpa had left me not just a passport, but a path to everything. And now, the choice was mine. As I walked into the fading light of Rome, the city stretched out before me, ancient and secretive, full of possibilities and dangers alike. I felt the weight of my grandfather's legacy, the thrill of discovery, and the knowledge that I had passed the ultimate test. But deep down, I knew one thing: the passport was just the beginning. And what came next would test everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and power, and it would change my life forever.